We talked to Ronnie Chatterji. He's professor of business and public policy at Duke University. He served on the White House National Economic Council as the CHIPS coordinator. This is what he had to say about next year in economic policy.
Well, the first issue is going to be, will the economy continue in the direction it's been going? You know, a lot of people at the beginning of 2023 were saying we were headed for a recession. But now, nearing the end of the year, we've seen inflation at least start to moderate, growth reaching the highest rate in the United States in the last 2 years, and the job market continuing to be strong, with unemployment still below 4%. So we're moving more towards a soft landing that many folks thought would be unlikely than we are towards a recession. And the question is going to be in 2024, do we continue that trajectory, or is there a disruption that's more significant? And that really, to me, is the biggest question about 2024.
And that job market is supporting, among other things, the consumers, who are really supporting the entire economy. In 2023, the job market was relevant not just for that, but also for all those labor disputes. Is organized labor going to be as big a factor in 2024 as it was in 2023?
Well, my gosh, 2023 was a banner year for labor, so it's hard to imagine that 2024 could be even more significant, but it's possible, and here's why. In 2023, labor achieved several key wins that really have been unprecedented in recent labor history. You think about UAW with strikes at all the big three, with a really bold gambit to try to secure 25% increase in wages over 4 years, and they succeeded. And that's going to send a signal to a lot of other industries about what's possible. The big question will be whether UAW can expand that organizing effort to places in the South, to foreign automakers like Hyundai and Honda, and of course Tesla, because really this is about the future of electric vehicles and how technology is changing the way we make automobiles. That's what's at stake, and if UAW manages to do that in 2024, it will be an even bigger story than it was in 23.
Ronnie, what about stimulus, particularly fiscal stimulus? Because there's still money coming down the pike from the Inflation Reduction Act, from the Chips and Science Act, things like that. Is that going to kick in 2024, and what effect might that have on the U.S. economy?
I think you will begin to see the impact of the Chips and Science Act, particularly the subsidies to build manufacturing here in the United States. You've already seen about $200 billion of committed capital investment. The question is, are you going to see more money coming from the federal government to support that? The Inflation Reduction Act, yes, the tax credits will continue to stimulate investment. You've also seen hundreds of billions of dollars in solar, in wind, and EVs. And that's going to continue in 24 and help support the economy as well. I think there's a question about global growth, though. If you look around the world, some of our strongest historical economies aren't doing as well. So I'm keeping an eye on places like Germany and, of course, China, which has been weaker than it's been in a long time. India and Japan have been the bright spots. We'll see if that continues.
China, big subject, has to be second largest economy in the world. It is also, you may have noticed, a presidential election year in the United States, and there seems to be a fair amount of hostility on both left and right now to China. Is this a year where there can be any further progress made in trying to figure out how to deal with China? Don't give in to them, but also don't keep them out.
I don't think you'll see any big milestone achievements. What I do think you'll see is a lot of talking. And talking isn't necessarily bad. President Biden sent 4 of his cabinet secretaries to China in the last 6 months. He met with President Xi in San Francisco. And while you didn't see big agreements coming out of this, the dialogue was important to keep communication lines open. At a time where there's a lot of tension across economics, politics, and military, those conversations help keep the temperature turned down. And you're seeing President Xi in China take some steps to open up his economy. They just allowed a bunch of European countries to come visit, their citizens to visit China without a visa. It's a symbolic move, but it suggests that he is hearing the calls to open up his economy.
Let's talk about tech. I mean, 2023 was certainly the year I first heard about generative AI through Chatterji, one of the great marketing devices, I think, of all time, if it's nothing else. How big a factor will generative AI be in 2024?
Oh, I think it's going to continue to be a banner year for AI, for large language models, and particularly ChatGPT, the technology that became the fastest growing consumer application in history. You saw this with Sam Altman's removal and then sort of replacement back as the CEO of OpenAI. It was a huge national news story, not just on the business pages, but around the world. And I think you'll see OpenAI be the center of many different discussions next year. The key thing about AI is, as this technology moves forward, is it going to replace you and me and do our job? Or is it going to complement us? Is it going to be our co-pilot and make us better? That's really what's at stake when it comes to AI.
And we hear from various experts in artificial intelligence, what we want is it to be supplementary rather than replacing humans and what they're doing. Can the government help nudge it or direct in that direction? We now have this big executive order, I mean, a pretty extensive executive order that's going to play out through 2024. What role can the government play in making sure we direct generative AI in the right direction?
Calling for transparency and accountability is the key thing. We don't want the government's bureaucracy to inhibit innovation in AI. When you see the amazing advances that have happened, some of it comes from federally funded government research, but in the end, it commercializes into for-profit companies that are developing the next generation of large language models and generative AI. But we have to make sure that we stay within the bounds of what society can tolerate. We have to make sure that we're not letting AI develop dangerous applications around autonomous weapons without the kind of supervision you need from the public trust. And so that's where I think government can play a key role, not inhibiting innovation, but setting the rules of the game where which we operate. That's what the AI executive order is all about.
Which government? Because it's one thing, that would be a tall order if it was just the United States. We didn't have to worry about anything else. But this is almost inherently a global phenomenon, where you can have competition, you have an arms race, essentially, in generative AI. What are the prospects of our really getting together with other countries to really agree on what the ground rules are?
I think the prospects are bright because you see AI affecting societies all over the world. The Chinese government has a strong interest, of course, in how AI is being used. The French have an interest in AI. You see one of the most exciting AI startups was founded in France. And so I think you'll have a lot of countries coming together. They're definitely going to have different priorities, however, and you're seeing that reflected in COP28. The same kinds of discussions that make global climate such an important issue are going to make AI the same kind of discussion, but it's going to be just as hard to make progress. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but I wouldn't expect any big breakthroughs in 2024.